So you're now going to be going through your whole man overboard process. So first thing that's going to happen is what? Somebody's going to shout, tell them what's going on, get everybody up on deck, find out what's going on. Somebody's going to press the man overboard button on the GPS. Hopefully somebody's going to be calling out Mayday. All sorts of these things are pretty set down. And if I was any of you sailing across the Atlantic, it needs to be on a chart at the chart table. You don't need the chart because you'll have all practiced it so much you'll be incredibly efficient at it. But in time of panic, people forget. All right, people need instruction. People like instruction when things are going to go wrong. How many people should know the man overboard process perfectly? Everybody. Who's the number 2 on board? Because George might be the skipper. So when you do your practicing, don't always let the skipper do the practice. Let one of the crew members or the number 2 or the mate or something do the practice as well. Really important. Big responsibility. Somebody's fallen overboard, something's gone wrong, you've got to get that person back. So it's a really big responsibility to actually make sure you get that back on board. So what we're going to do now is we'll launch the Jonbuoy. All right, it will inflate down here. When this Jonbuoy is launched at sea, it has a drogue attached to it. It has the white box that it's in is attached to the keel underneath, and any seaway or wind is going to aid any self-righting. If it inflates on its side, the movement of the ocean, the movement of the thing actually wanting to move in the water is going to obviously aid self-righting, because the force exerted by the drogue and by the container actually pull it upright. We don't have any of that here, so if it does inflate on its side, I remember I had to just give it a little helping hand.
I'm going to hold it. I'm going to be the strong point on the boat if you'll give me that licence. And Bones, if you could pull to launch.
Now the inflation of the Jonbuoy is deliberately quite slow. The reason it's deliberately quite slow, George, you might have to go and get it to stop it blowing away. The reason it's quite slow is that underneath it, as you'll see in a minute, there's a big keel which has to fill up with water. Alright? And the keel gives it lots of stability. So let's just get it alongside the pontoon. Move over to the knee.
In addition, Alistair, you might find the mast inflates last to stop windage.
Alright, so you will see, those of you who can see this, has a light on it, obviously got a little flag, and as I say, you can have AIS units fitted to it that activate as it inflates. What you can't see is the container and the drogue, which have already sunk away, and obviously going to keep the drift rate down to an absolute minimum. Again, there is a right and a wrong way to get into the Jonbuoy. Those of you who can see it now, it says board here in big writing. That small end of the Jonbuoy is actually designed to sink when you get in it. So it aids getting in it, making it simple. The other things that you need to know about, let's see if I can turn it round. So this here is the lifting strop. Alright, so when you get the Jonbuoy back alongside the boat, with the casualty in it, that is the thing that you attach the halyard to. The person stays in the Jonbuoy, okay? There is also a Coyton line in here with 5 metres of webbing on it, which obviously the casualty can throw to the boat as you get close together. There's all sorts of advantages of being inside this if you're the casualty. You can see it's a much bigger target to aim for. Alright? The casualty is principally, not totally, but principally out of the water. When you see George in it in a minute, his legs are going to dangle over the edge, all right? But principally his core, his middle of his body, which you need to try and keep warm, or out of the water as much as possible, will be out of the water. Now George has never got into one of these, all right? So it's really a question of I won't say the blind leading the glide because I've done it lots of times, but in you go, see if you can get in. Once you're in, just turn over on your back and you're in. So in that position, George is actually relatively safe. It's obviously not in the ideal place because he'd be far better if he was on the boat. But in that position, he's relatively safe. He's buoyant, he's out of the water, his core is out of the water. Psychologically, he'll be in a much better place now. All right? He's out of the water as far as he's concerned. He's done his bit. Now it's entirely up to you back on the boat. Okay, so imagine now you've got the casualty alongside the boat. How are you going to get them out? Normally, you would be in a situation where you'd use a halyard off the main mast. All right, we obviously can't do that here, so we're going to use a halyard off the mizzen mast, which not everybody's going to have, admittedly. So what we'll do, we're going to use the. I'm going to climb on board now. We're going to use the main halyard off the mizzen mast. There you go, Steve. And what we thought we'd do to start with is, this is quite a big boat. It's quite modern. Let's try and lift it out without that first. We'll try and lift it out just using a halyard. All right? Yeah. So here's the first question: are your halyards long enough? I actually don't have very much of a halyard here. All right. In reality, of course, as soon as you start pulling, you get more. So this is quite a big boat. It's got lots of halyards, lots of rope, lots of winches. All right. And I've got 2 turns on the drum now. Not really enough. All right. And this is going to be really hard. So it's not a self-tailing winch. I'm going to try and do it all. It's going to take a long time. Oh, and by the way, if you 2 of you up, who's driving the boat right now? Nobody. All right. Yes, you might have your autopilot on. Okay. But it's just not easy. It's difficult. And it's hard work. And of course, you can guarantee the person in the water is the strongest person on board. It always happens that way, alright? You can start to hear the water now running out the keel. I could carry on winding now, but I'm not going to because it's a nice sunny day. Alright? And this is the hard way of doing it. I'm just going to lower you down there, George. Alright? When we did all these trials that we talked about, at the very end of the day, we decided, let's go back to real basics, and we'll try a good old-fashioned pulley block, a handy billy. All right? And we gave it a go. It was a real last thought, because there's lots of stuff that we sell. There's helicopter lifting strops, all this sort of stuff that supposedly make your life easy. How do you actually recover the person? And the thing we found the easiest, the most controlled, the piece of kit that you can have the most help doing is a conventional block and tackle. But, there's a big but, it only works if you, A, you know where it is on the boat, because you'll need it in a hurry, and B, blocks and tackles are renowned for getting tangled. So you've got to work out how you're going to store it. Do you store it pulled together block to block? Do you store it in a sleeve so it can't twist on itself? Where do you store it? The bottom of the locker is not the best place for it. A lot of people talk about, oh, it's not a problem, I'll use the main sheet and swing the boom out over the boat and use a topping lift on the end of the boom. For me personally, I just don't think that will happen. By the time you've undone a shackle on the boat, it's very rarely undone, etc, etc. So what we're going to do now is we'll actually just put the handy billy on here, and then what I'd really like is I need a volunteer. Alright? So I need a volunteer, not the strongest person in the audience, and I'm going to be really sexist now and ask if a lady wouldn't mind doing it. Just to illustrate how easy it is. Alright? So do you want to...
Just...
That's a very valid point, actually. Having a dedicated man overboard block and tackle is it's a bit extravagant. So you do have blocks and tackles on the boat. You've got kicking straps, you do have main sheets, but they're quite often attached to other things. So you need to be in a situation of, if you're going to use it for something else, then make sure that it's easily get-at-able. All right? All right? I'm just making sure to go away.
I'm good, I'm just holding on to
Yeah, you just take it easy there, mate. Don't overdo it. Okay. So at that stage, of course, what you're going to do is pull the block and tackle. Now, just before it goes any higher, this one's got a cleat in the top. The cleat goes in the top of it, not on the bottom block. That means you can have a rest. While you're pulling the person out of the water, you can have a rest. If you fall over, if you let go of the rope for whatever reason, all right, the person in the water is not going to fall back in the water. Okay? So just bear that in mind. Okay. Now, what you've got to do is,
Oh, you can just put it.
what you've got to do now is you've got to make sure it's gone high enough. As you'll see in a minute, when this comes out of the water, there's quite a lot of gubbins underneath it, and you've got to get the whole thing out of the water, all right? So, I'm just going to move him down the boat. You can have a walk through all that. And just give him a pull. Yeah.
This is much better. Guys, this is still very heavy.
It's not easy. It's hard work. All right. What you can do, of course, is you can always give the lady end. If the person in the Jonbuoy is complimentary, you can give them the lady end in the hand. George, you can pull as well. You're going to get a nice sound when the water comes out.
So that's the complicated.
He has got a bit of an incentive, hasn't he?
Yes.
Now, as I said, you'd obviously be doing this amidships normally, so you wouldn't have the issue of actually wanting to pull this back aft. All right. So you can see the principle now. We've lifted person, Jonbuoy, and everything else out of the water. He's protected from being bounced on the side of the yacht by the ring of the Jonbuoy. All right, and he's horizontal. He's quite happy. He can help with the aid of the handy billy. All right. And he can actually make this work and work for you as opposed to be against you. Obviously, if he started showing signs of hypothermia, slight unconsciousness or whatever, then he may not be able to help. So that's that's a 6-to-1 block and tackle, and it's possible, but it's hard work. Some people might decide, well, I'll go 8-to-1. It's fine, it won't be quite so hard, but you've got more string to pull. All right, and obviously from here, we would now continue to raise him and then bring it inboard with him in it. All right. If you get tired, you can let go of that now, and nothing's going to happen. All right. If you need to stop to run back to the wheel for whatever reason, if you need to run back and actually change the course of the yacht or whatever, you can do that. And the other really good thing is we can talk to each other. We can communicate with the casualty. You know, he can tell you he might have broken his leg or whatever. He can tell you what's going on, rather than somebody amidships having to rush back to a winch to wind them out of the water. Boat might be rolling through 25 degrees, 30 degrees all the way. It's going to get slammed backwards and forwards, all right? So, thank you for being a casualty, George. Yeah, you managed to do that without getting wet hair. Yeah, he was very worried about his hair before he got in the water. This is an option, all right? It is an option for you, okay? As much as I'd all like you to come and buy Jonbuoys now, the key thing is having the right piece of kit for you, and you have to go practice with the piece of kit. Some people will take an inflatable horseshoe or a horseshoe like that, They're not designed to pick people out of the water with. They're not like a helicopter lifting strop. Some inflatable horseshoes you can pick people out of the water. It's personal choice. You have to practice. All right. Anybody here practiced picking somebody up with an inflated life jacket using the becket on the jacket or the lifting strop in the jacket? Anybody tried it? Easy or it's not very comfortable, is it? No, it's really uncomfortable, and with a crutch strap on, it's even more uncomfortable. All right. So you just need to go practice. It's absolutely critical.